afternoon, Baltimore. This is Dr. Marsha Koger with the Granted in Style radio show. We have a really special show today that we're going to talk about. I want to kind of give you some preview on it. The COVID-19 pandemic at the beginning of 2020 hit the sports industry really hard. Many professional leagues across the globe suspended their seasons, and hundreds of thousands of jobs were put at risk because public sporting events across the country were canceled. Now, analysis suggests that an estimated $2.2 billion U.S. dollars of national TV revenue for the sports industry could have been lost as a result of the crisis. So that's just one way. So the topic today is the topic today is the pandemic and the sports industry and how that has impacted the sports industry. And as I just said, there was a loss of money, there was a loss of jobs. So I have with us today two sports enthusiasts to talk about the impact of the pandemic on the sports industry. So honored to have with us today, we have Tony Thornton. Tony, you can do a hand clap for yourself.
Oh, okay. I appreciate that. There we go. Thank you for having me, Dr. Koger. I certainly appreciate that.
We have Tony Thornton, who actually has been a long-time employee of Radio 1. He's a voice that I've heard on the radio for a very long time. He works a lot behind the scenes, but he is a sports enthusiast. He does a lot with the Ravens here in Baltimore, so he really has a rich perspective that he's going to share with us today. So thanks for joining us, Tony.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Sure. And then for my second guest to talk about is actually my husband, Vernon Koger. Hand claps for Vernon.
All right.
And Vernon I've been married to Vernon for 30 years. And you talk about sports enthusiast, just football watcher. He was very athletic way back in the day in high school. He actually was a track and field star. He ran track and field for Northern High School. He ended up running as well at Frostburg University and played football, where I have all kinds of pictures of him, too, long time ago back in the day when he was working on sports. So we have Vernon to join us, and he's been very avid sports enthusiast as well. Vernon, you want to say hello?
Good afternoon, everyone. How's everyone doing?
Great. So let's get started here. So we're going to really talk about the impact of the pandemic in sports. So I might ask both of you the question, too. I'm going to start with you, Vernon. So as we know, the football season starts September the 10th, so that's coming up. So just what would you normally be doing right now? And I'm asking him because right now, and I'm going to really let them talk, but right now I know he would be really working avidly on his fantasy football. So, Vernon, talk about what would you normally be doing right now?
Right now, because I'm involved in a few fantasy football leagues, I'll probably be gearing up for fantasy football. And so with sports being impacted, I usually kill time by maybe watching some other sports. Right now, we got the NBA basketball playoffs going on, so I'm happy that they restarted. I'm also excited. I've been watching baseball as well. Because I'm such an enthusiastic about sports, I've been watching a lot of different sports now that we have reacted or restarted some of these games for both the leagues, baseball, basketball, football, and even NASCAR and golf is all going on. So I've been watching a little bit of everything.
Okay, good, great. Thanks, Vernon. How about you, Tony? What have you been doing right now? What do you usually do during this time?
Yeah, Vernon's right on in terms of what typically happens with the NFL. In particular, you have the preseason that goes on in August, and there's a lot of hoopla in terms of looking at how the teams go head-to-head with other teams out there and looking at training camp. And those are the kind of things that really get you excited this time of the year. And I think to Vernon's point, there hasn't been much of that. Certainly the season will just start in the National Football League with the regular season. And, of course, with the NBA now ongoing with playoffs, with baseball season now underway. Baseball had a few difficulties to get started with the COVID with some of the cases. But typically this is the time of year, to Vernon's point, you get excited about fantasy leagues, and you get excited about the preseason, and you get excited about about what's going to happen with the Ravens, but it's really been different. This pandemic certainly has put a hinder on just I guess your overall excitement about what's going on. But certainly the National Football League is moving forward with their season, and hopefully without a hitch when it comes to the COVID.
So can you talk about just what other adjustments have been made because of COVID?
Well,
Tony,
sure. Absolutely. I can say, for example, Major League Baseball, they reduced their season to 60 games. With playoffs, of course, at the end of the season, making those adjustments, and that really started about a month ago. And I think one of the issues with baseball has been the bubble situation. Is it safe to play sports in an open type of environment with other players and staff and trainers and those types of things? And I think baseball, for the most part, has done a really good job in terms of keeping some of their players safe. There have been some outbreaks with some teams where you have a few guys that do get COVID. They've canceled some games or suspended some games. And in the NBA, I think they've done a remarkable job. They have them all in a bubble in Orlando, where they have teams going head-to-head. They've had zero issues with COVID. And and Vernon can probably touch on it. We felt probably when sports, when it got started again, the NBA would probably have more success because of the way that game is functioned. When you don't have as many players on a team and you can put them all in one area or one bubble. Baseball, it's been a little more challenging. It's going to be interesting to see how the NFL kind of handles this going forward. But you anticipate there's going to be COVID positive tests anyway. It just depends on how these teams are going to handle it, moving forward. But so far, the NBA has been the most successful, I think, at this point.
Okay, that's good. Vernon, can you talk a little bit more about the bubble and the impact?
Sure.
What exactly is the bubble and the impact that, again, pandemic has had on sports?
Okay.
Talk about the bubble.
Tony is right on point. What actually happened was the NBA had agreed, both with the players' union and also the NBA league, had agreed to, condense the season. It's a restart for them, actually, because what happened actually first was college basketball. They stopped playing, and then followed was the NBA. They stopped. And so they have agreed to restart, like Tony said. And then what they did was they agreed to play in Orlando, Florida, and they had certain conditions that they put in place to allow this to happen. So when you talk about bubble, just think about being maybe on a campus where you can't leave the campus. Now, they have certain restrictions where I think they have about 4 or 5 hotels where they have the NBA players in one hotel. They might have reporters in another hotel, referees, and some other people in different hotels. So what is agreed upon is that they all will be pretty much stay right there on that campus, or being in Orlando, Florida, being in that bubble, not leaving the grounds, not having people come in. So it's a restricted area. And so they all agreed to do that. And with that being said, they have certain restrictions that they put in place where, they're being tested regularly. I believe they changed the process of the testing. One of the things they were doing the nasal swab with the Q-tips. They were doing that. I think they're doing the saliva testing. They may be doing both now, but right now that's what they have. They have restricted their going out and coming in. They can't go out. They have to stay in, at least for this point in time. Now, what I'm also hearing is this is for the first round of playoffs. Second round, they may allow some of the players' wives and children to take place. I'm not sure how they're going to do that, but they put like a lot of restrictions in place. One thing that I think is really funny was what the agreement that the NBA did was they put a restriction. They have an NBA snitch line, where if you see a player that's in violation, you can call that number and say, look, so-and-so is not doing what they're supposed to do. Because you got to think about it. This virus is a serious thing, and anybody can get it, and, you don't want whatever you're doing to be condemned or brought down where you're not being successful with the players being able to play on the court.
Right. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No,
Tony.
I was going to say Vernon's right because, when you look at professional sports, and that's what we're talking about for right now, of course, college sports is a different type of environment, but certainly to the point of being a professional, you have to not only make sure that you stay in that bubble and you stay within the guidelines and rules of that organization, you have to be diligent about that. You cannot bring anyone in. You cannot leave that facility. because they test on a regular basis every day in some cases. And so this is really where the challenge is, especially with the NBA, especially with the NFL as well, is are you able to maintain that quarantine sort of level where you don't leave and you don't bring anyone in? And there have been some cases in baseball where there have been some baseball players that have violated that quarantine, and that's impacted the actual team that they played for. So, as professionals, that's where I think where sort of the controversy is. These guys are getting paid lots of money, and all they have to do is simply stay in a quarantine environment for a short period of time. And can they do that? And the NFL is certainly we're going to find that out very shortly.
Right. That's good. Now, too, Vernon mentioned about bringing the wives in and bringing the family. And I've watched several things on TV now with the fake fans in the stand. And I'm not sure I like that, too. I know, and I can imagine as a player that might have an impact on them as well. Can you talk about just any recommendations or suggestions of how we could possibly have a sports event with fans in person, and then also even some recommendations with maybe us seeing it on TV?
Yeah. Well, I can react to that. I know particularly in the NFL, they're going to reduce some teams will allow a certain amount of fans to come in. Like I think Kansas City Chiefs is allowing like 22% of their fans to come in. So of course the players that's going to come in, the fans that's going to come in, it's going to be stagnated where the fans are going to be spread out all over the stadium to prevent the virus. And I still think they have to wear a mask in order to prevent the COVID. They're going to be tested probably before they come in, and they're going to have to wear and maintain a mask. So as far as the virtual fans, I think it's good. I think it's not a problem. I think it helps the players a little bit to look up and see fans in the stadium. They do and have pumped in, cheering, laughter, and stuff like that into the stadium. So they get the real sense of how it feels to be either in an arena or on the court or whatever. But I'll say this, the true players, I believe, whether it be basketball, baseball, or even football, because they love the sport, sometimes you get so caught up in the moment of the sports or the events that you're doing, you don't really think about the fans. You just play. You just play. And I think a lot of the players look at it that way. You hear the cheers and the clapping and all that, maybe after something has happened. But you don't normally when you're caught up in the game, you're so focused, you don't really think about it at that point in time.
Do you have any comments, Tony?
Yeah, I would agree with Vernon. I think what's going to be interesting, I'm a season ticket holder for the Ravens and have been for the last 10 years. And really there needs to be, in my opinion, one voice to make this a decision, because certainly that's been the issue with this pandemic to begin with, is that we have different messages throughout the country. But as a league, I think, because they're up to Vernon's point, the Kansas City Chiefs are allowing a certain amount of folks in. Baltimore, they're trying to petition for a certain amount of fans to attend the games. And then other stadiums have actually come out and said, we will not have fans in our stadium. So to me, there needs to be a consistent message because, again, hotspots can develop. And I think it's worked so far for baseball. It's worked for the NBA where you don't have fans. And I think the virtual, and I think to Vernon's point, professionals, they don't need that fan interaction in order to perform their job on the field. Now, again, the NFL more so than any sport probably is driven by that crowd noise. But again, for the safety of the fans, because keep in mind, when you're talking about a stadium, even if the Ravens allow 7,500, there has to be a situation. How do we choose which fans are able to go? How do we go through the process of making sure that they're safe? Because one outbreak, if one fan or if one person comes in that's positive, that's going to ruin everything at that point. So in my opinion, I feel that all of these stadiums, the NFL needs to take a look at the NBA, needs to take a look at Major League Baseball. They've been able to have these games and they've been played safely. I don't think the NFL needs to have fans. And if there is a situation where they feel that way, it needs to be a consistent message across the board.
Right.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Now, what other recommendations or suggestions do you have in terms of how this can work?
One of the things I think could happen is to have individual bubbles. For example, so if we're talking about the NFL, because I think Tony and I both agree that's going to be the biggest challenge is the NFL, because the players are scattered. There are more players in the NFL than they are, and obviously on the baseball team and also on the basketball team, because those are the major sports right now. But I think what they could possibly do, is to have individual bubbles for different states or different teams. For example, Baltimore Ravens can have a hotel where they have that bubble when all the Ravens stay in that one hotel. Nobody comes in, nobody goes out. Same thing can be done for any other team. The Washington Redskins, or they're not called the Redskins no more, but the Washington team, they could have a bubble where they stay in a hotel there. And so even in that bubble, with them staying in maybe a potential hotel, they could have the referees or whoever other officials that they might need in order for the game to take place. So for example, they will probably have to fly. That's the biggest challenge that the NFL is going to have, is that they're going to have to fly to different cities and different states in order to have a game. So with that being said, they're going to need, referees obviously to be contained with the virus, or where they stay in a hotel. Yeah, right. The bubble.
They have the bubble too.
So so they would need to stay in. Everybody that's associated with the game, the officials, the referees, the people, even people that maybe even serve the food. So I think each city could have an individual bubble, because what I think Tony was alluding to, there's different laws and different regulations for different cities and different states. So in order to maintain that, they may have to do that for the whole entire league, and that way they can proceed to have successful games. Now, one of the other things I think was mentioned was to have a bubble where maybe like the NBA, when they get to the playoffs, if they are able to make it that far, it's such a gigantic task for that to take place. So, but if they're able to have a bubble during a season, that could probably help reduce and maintain the COVID-19 virus.
Okay, that's good. That's good. You have any suggestions or recommendations, Tony?
No, I think Vernon, it makes sense. What he's saying makes sense in terms of what these teams need to do. I know with Major League Baseball, I think one of the things that they're looking to do when the playoffs start is to have, instead of the teams traveling, maybe have 2 stadiums where they have the playoff games. It's easier in baseball. You can play 2, 3, 4 games a day when it comes to baseball. Football's a little more challenging because of the physical nature of the game itself. But again, I think that if the teams are disciplined enough, I think that the NFL, certainly with the money that they have and with the agreement with the union, they can create an environment where these players are protected, even on planes, even in hotels, as long as every player understands. And again, the NFL is more stringent on it right now, because what they're saying is that you can be fined if you break any of these particular protocols that we have. The NBA, to Vernon's point, they have a hotline, snitching line, whatever it takes. These players, again, they love the game, number one, but they want to stay safe. A lot of times they're away from their they understand that they're going to be away from their families for a period of time. But at the end of the day, if they're getting money, if they're getting paid, and that's what they do, and as long as they feel comfortable with the restrictions that are in place with these teams, then they should be allowed to play, and it really shouldn't be any issue for them as long as they stay within the realm of what these teams are asking them to do. And I think it can. I personally think it can work. It can work for the NFL. I just feel like, in my opinion, right now, fans should not be allowed to attend any games this year. And a lot of the fans, a lot of the season ticket holders, kind of feel the same. They feel like, look, I'll defer my season ticket money to next year, because hopefully in 2021 there'll be there's going to be a vaccine. It's going to be a little bit more safer, hopefully, to attend games, and I think that will give a big boost to the economy as well.
That's good, Vernon.
Yeah, I wanted
that's great. Good.
That was a good point, talking points, and it's really, unfortunately, and gets fortunate, it's wrapped around the money, obviously. And with the NFL, most of the players, if they do not play a total season, they may not get paid the total amount that they do for each and every game. Now, I know certain players have a specified contract where they're saying, regardless how many games we play this year, in my contract, I want to be able to say I'm going to be paid my full salary, regardless. So a lot of it is stimulating around a person's ability to play. And I know that's motivation right there for some of the players, whether it be the NBA, NFL, or even the baseball team, to continue to stay healthy and so they can be able to play.
And I think what's key, Vernon, you're right. I think what's key is that every single professional athlete had the option before the season started to opt out. In other words, they made a conscious choice to say, look, we would rather not play this year, and we choose not to. And that's their choice. And I respect their choice based on health reasons, based on whatever else is going on. But they're making a choice whether they can play or not to play. It isn't that the NFL's forcing these guys to play, or the NBA or Major League Baseball. They have opt-outs where they did not have to play this year. And a lot of players, took advantage of it, especially in the National Football League. There may be over 120 players that are not playing this year because of COVID. So, again, they do have the option, but I think to Vernon's point, look, either you're going to, you play through the season as long as you feel comfortable with the protocols that are in place. It should not be any issue. And again, you will get some positive tests, and the teams have some plans in place, contingency plans in place if that happens. So it's just going to be a very interesting season when we get started.
Right. So, and I know we've been talking a lot about, again, the impact on the players and the fans. Now, just you personally, how has it impacted even your schedule? I know, too, that sports does have a cycle and a schedule. Basketball is played a certain time, baseball, football, and it does seem like they're off schedule. Just how has that kind of impacted you, kind of thrown off your sports schedule?
Well, I would say, COVID-19 has impacted us all in so many different ways. And I think we started adjusting right away, even for people that have to work. There are people that have to work, they have to adjust, and they're no longer going into work. They're working from home. You have people that have kids. They're teaching the kids at home and working. So the adjustment's been ongoing. So I think the same can be true for all the different sports. You're adjusting, you're understanding that you can't do certain things now, or it's going to take time, things can be canceled, switched around. And, I mean, that's been ongoing. They're doing it actually for the horse racing. Mm-hmm. They changed the horse racing. The Olympics, they're going to postpone the Olympics. Right. They postponed that a whole year. So I think you have to be open and just know the adjustments going to need to be made, and you have to go with the best way you can.
How about you, Tony? Like, do you feel funny or a little off because of the change in the schedule?
Yeah, certainly. I think I think for Vernon and myself, it's going to be interesting because you're going to have a lot of these sports converging or going on at the same time, which is unique. You're going to have baseball season, which has happened. Baseball and football have kind of been together, but the NBA season, that's never been during the or at least the end of the NBA season with the playoffs. That doesn't extend beyond July at the most. So that's the interesting part. There's going to be so much in terms of sports that you can watch. And I think that's going to be a lot of overload to a certain degree. But I think, selfishly as a sports enthusiast, we definitely want to see sports. Vernon can probably attest to it. But we also have to take a step back and say, what is the safest way to do it? Or is it even worth it for this year? Should we just postpone it for this year? Now, a lot of college sports are postponing or canceling their fall seasons because of this. And a lot of big controversy there as well, because a lot of college students are going back on campus, and therefore you have a lot of college sports that are also that have canceled. And a lot of players don't feel that's right. But we've seen, obviously, with young folks especially, that there's been huge outbreaks in some of these major colleges and universities, and even some of the major conferences have said we're not playing this year. And there's 3 conferences in particular in the South that are saying, nope, we're going to have a season. So that, to me, is going to be the interesting part of it. But no, it's business as usual for a lot of these teams. And for me, it's been an adjustment. It's just been different. But I do understand the safety of these players and of these fans. And, we need to make sure everyone is safe. Sports will always be there. It will be there next year and years beyond.
So what about any recommendations that you have for other people who feel like the both of you who are sports enthusiasts, and how have you been even dealing with it, and how do you deal with that sports urge that you've had and just being a sports enthusiast? Any recommendations or suggestions for our listeners, other sports enthusiasts that are out there? Vernon?
Well, I would say you can only watch so many replays of
and he's been watching the replays every replay.
So, I think you just gotta, do other things. Taking on other projects, doing a home project. Sometimes I like that separation, honestly. Because I get so involved in football, particularly football, that when the season's over, I have to detach from sports. I need to, wean myself off, take on another project, something maybe in the house or something, because I'm so into it. Because, like I said, I do fantasy football as well, so I'm always constantly looking for players and things of that sort. So I think engaging in any other activity would be great, actually. That's a good separation for me.
Okay, good. Any recommendations, Tony, or anything that you've been doing?
Vernon said it all. I think, we get so involved. And if you speak to my wife, she'll tell you that I should be, you should be getting paid by the Ravens instead of, but I think all in all, I think because certainly, we tailgate, we go to every home game. We go to a couple of road games a year for the most part. We haven't been able to do that this year. We haven't had any types of vacations, but I think what's been good is that we've been able to sort of bond as a couple and bond as a household and really kind of say there's things other than sports that can really occupy your time, whether it's projects around the house or doing some things. So Vern is absolutely right. It's, I think that, sports is sports. We know it's important sometimes for your mental health and your emotional well-being, but you also kind of take on other tasks to kind of keep you sort of grounded. But certainly, and I can speak on, Vernon probably knows is that we are selfish when it comes to enjoying that competition between two teams or two players or whatever it is. But you have to also take into perspective, maybe we can postpone that or hold off on that because it's going to be there at some point again. And as a fan, it's different, but we've been able to kind of adjust in our household. But it's been challenging, no question about that.
Right. Well, that's great. And I'm glad we talked about this today. And I wanted to talk about this because I haven't really seen much coverage about the impact of this for fans. I've been hearing it talked about for even the college sports, for high school sports, for the athlete, but not really the fans. So, and I know you both are sports enthusiasts, so I really appreciate you coming on, Tony. I appreciate you, Vernon. Thank you. I wanted to talk about this. And this is Dr. Marsha Koger with the Granite and Style Radio Show. I always like to end with amen, which is, again, thanks, guys. Did a great job in presenting perspective here. But I like to always end with amen, which is agree with God, move with God, and with God, and never doubt God. This is Dr. Marsha Koger with the Granite and Style Radio Show. I'll talk to you all next Saturday. Thanks again, Tony.
Thanks,
Vernon. Okay.